I've been using the brand new Google Pixel 8 for 3 full days now, and there's loads of things I really like about it, but there's one main reason that I don't think you should buy this phone. At least not yet. We'll get onto that later, but in this video I want to share my first impressions and initial review of the Pixel 8. So let's start with what you get in the box. I pre-ordered the Pixel 8, so I got a pair of Pixel Buds Pro for free, and I also bought one of Google's own cases for the Pixel 8, so we're going to be unboxing them too. Firstly, the case is super simple, made from silicone and feels pretty premium. Next, in the Pixel Buds Pro box, we get the wireless earphones themselves, some different sizes of silicone tips, and some paperwork. In the Pixel 8 box, we get the Obsidian version of the phone, which as you can see is a dark grey that I really like the look of. Next, you get a white USB-C to USB-C charging cable, a USB-C to USB-A adapter, and some paperwork which includes the SIM ejector tool. Turning the Pixel on for the first time, we get faced with a giant Google logo. With the unboxing out the way, and after 3 days of use, let's talk about my experience so far. First of all, I really like this phone from a design perspective. It's a pretty simple and clean design, and I like the look of the camera visor, which is definitely unique to the Pixel line. I especially like the matte brushed finish on the visor of the Pixel 8 over the glossy metal finish that you get on the Pixel 8 Pro. The metal rails around the phone continue with this brushed aluminium, and this feels really nice and premium to hold. The glass back adds to the premium feel, and the Pixel 8 overall has a substantial heft to it without being heavy. Speaking of the glass back though, this is definitely the main negative about this phone's design, because if you touch it for even like 1 microsecond, you'll have approximately 7,000 fingerprints on it. So if you like to rock your phone without a case, this is undoubtedly going to get annoying. It's not a huge problem for me though, because I always put a case on my phones. The official Pixel 8 case that I got from the Google store is actually really nice, so I wanted to give it a dedicated shout out here. It's grippy, it smooths out the sharp edges of the camera visor, and it has some really underrated clicky buttons on the side, which allows you to maintain the tactile feel of the buttons of the phone even when it's in a case. The only possible weakness I can see with this case is the little section above the USB-C port, which could definitely split over time. This is something that happened with my Samsung S22 silicone case, and it's just a bit annoying. Speaking of the S22, if you saw my previous video, you'll know that I switched to the Pixel 8 from this phone. So naturally, there's going to be quite a few comparisons between the two phones in this video. The Pixel is visually noticeably bigger than the S22. However, in reality, it still maintains the small and reachable form factor that I grew to love about my S22. Other reviews have mentioned that the bezels on the Pixel 8's 6.2-inch screen are completely uniform in size. But to my eyes, unless they're playing tricks on me, it looks like the bottom bezel is just a hair larger than the other ones on the phone. In everyday use though, you absolutely won't notice this. And once you turn that screen on, it looks fantastic. It gets super bright with Google promising a peak brightness of 2000 nits, and this basically results in you never being in a situation where the screen isn't bright enough to see. The sun was shining bright this weekend and I could still easily see the screen even with sunglasses on. Out of the box, the screen runs at 60 Hz, even though it's capable of 120 Hz. So the first thing I'd recommend that you do if you do decide to pick up this phone is to go into your settings and turn on the smooth display setting so that the screen runs at 120 Hz. This will make the experience of swiping, scrolling and tapping throughout the software way smoother. And a quick note about the under-display fingerprint sensor on this phone, it's optical rather than the ultrasonic fingerprint sensors that you get on the S22 and many other phones. This is slightly slower and less accurate than the S22, but I've not had any situations where I've been frustrated with the fingerprint sensor being too slow. Another physical feature is the vibration motor, and I'd say that the haptics on this phone are far superior to the S22. The Pixel 8 gets Google's brand new Android 14 operating system, and unsurprisingly, this runs really well on the phone that Google has designed to specifically showcase this. In comparison to Samsung's One UI, it's super clean and doesn't come with any of the bloatware that you often find on Samsung phones. I know Samsung has improved on this in recent years, but it's still definitely a problem, with pre-installed apps such as Samsung's Global Goals app, which I don't think anyone has ever willingly opened up. Transferring from the S22 to the Pixel was a really simple process thanks to the transfer feature that's built into Android. So this meant that I was up and running in a couple of hours with all of my apps and all of my existing photos and videos. I did have to sign in again to any apps that weren't stock Google apps, but that wasn't really a problem. One of the features I used on a daily and nightly basis on my S22 was Samsung's excellent modes, and particularly the work and sleep modes. I used the work mode, funnily enough, for when I'm at work and I want to block out any distracting notifications. I'm looking at you, TikTok. And the sleep mode is excellent for putting your phone on completely silent, dimming the screen down to a minimum, and also making it grayscale. Fortunately, on the Pixel 8, the focus and bedtime modes built into Android 14 have basically allowed me to replicate the sleep and work modes on my S22. The only downside here is that when I activate bedtime mode on my Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, it doesn't automatically sync this with the Pixel 8. But this is a minor downside because my phone's always right next to me when I'm in bed, so I can just change that too. These are basic general differences that I noticed in the software, but there are also a load of Pixel exclusive features that Google has packed into the Pixel 8. Mainly in the form of AI related features that are powered by the Tensor G3's TPU, or Tensor Processing Unit. Firstly, and I know this has been good on Pixel phones for a little while now, the dictation on the Pixel 8 is very quick and accurate, which is awesome. This also translates into an excellent transcription feature that can be found in the Recorder app. I'm really excited about this summarize feature that's due to be coming later this year, as this will allow you to summarize a whole conversation or meeting that you've recorded by using Google's AI Bard to process the lengthy transcription into key bullet points. To be fair, you can already do this by copying and pasting the transcription into Bard and asking it to summarize it for you, but it's going to be nice to have this built in. You now also get access to AI-generated wallpapers. Now, this isn't the almost totally flexible prompt-based system that you get with other AI image generation services, but is instead a Google-tailored experience that gives you 7 genres of wallpaper to choose from. Within each genre, you get 3 or 4 variables that you can change to generate a different wallpaper. This means it's not unlimited in what you can create, and I guess this is Google's way of safeguarding themselves from you creating some really weird shit that will come back to bite them later on. I personally like to set a custom picture wallpaper, but that's just me. The AI-focused software experience continues into the camera, which is a huge focal point for Google on the Pixel 8. But before we talk about the AI camera features, let's talk about the experience of taking photos with this phone. Bluntly, you can take some excellent photos with the Pixel 8. And when you're just pointing and shooting, I'm really happy with the results you get. The shots are contrasty and punchy without doing that weird HDR thing that brings the shadows up way too much. The Pixel 8 tends to maintain shadows at a really nice level, which looks really great in my opinion. While you don't get the Pro manual controls that are reserved for the more expensive 8 Pro, which is blatant software blocking of features by Google to differentiate their phones, you do get the ability to select manual white balance and also set manual exposure if you want to on the Pixel 8. You can also still shoot in RAW if you want to edit the files yourself later in something like Lightroom, which is good. I will miss the really extensive manual camera controls that you got in the S22 though, and this was definitely a positive for the Samsung for someone who is a photographer or videographer like me who would actively make use of those features. I do really like the layout of the camera app on the Pixel 8 though, which has everything reachable at the bottom of the screen and also has a dedicated toggle to switch between video and photo modes. I did have one weird thing happen when I was trying to take photos with the camera app though, and that was that it would frequently swipe from the right like a white screen, and it would be almost like the camera app had reset itself, because when I went to check the photos that I'd been taking, they just weren't there, which could be really bad if you were trying to capture a very, specific moment and you missed it. Fortunately for me, I was taking images of buildings, so I could just capture them again and it wasn't an issue. But if you're trying to capture a once in a lifetime moment and you missed it because the camera app glitched out, that would be terrible. Hopefully this is something that Google can address with an OS update in the future. The ultra-wide camera at 12 megapixels over the 50 megapixels of the main camera is noticeably worse quality, but is still going to be more than good enough for social media. But the main camera captures tons of detail and just looks really good. However, I noticed a few times when I was using the 2x crop on the main camera that it couldn't focus on my fiance Jill's face when I was trying to take a portrait photo of her. And this was kind of weird. Even though the focus point was actually on her face, it still came out blurry. It seemed to have no issues with the main camera or the ultra wide, so I'm not really sure what was going on there. This is now recording on the Google Pixel 8, and this is using the main camera and the microphones on the Pixel 8 in an ideal setting, so one where we've got good lighting. But we are using the microphones on the Pixel 8, so it might not sound amazing in this situation because it's a little bit of echo in here. If we switch over to the Hollyland Lark Max that we've got here, it should sound a lot better, and this could be probably usable in a setting where you want to get some good YouTube video without having to break the bank and just using something like your phone. I've actually been really impressed with the video quality you can get out of the Pixel 8, especially the colors that you get out of it, and the HDR video looks fantastic on the Pixel 8 screen if you're looking back at it. So that might not translate onto YouTube very well, but it does, just trust me, it looks amazing. I'm gonna have to do some more testing on the photo and video quality out of the Pixel 8 and the camera experience overall, and comparing it to something like a mirrorless camera like this, that whether it stands up to the competition and it could be used as your main camera. Let's get back onto the AI features, and we have a variety of these to use with the camera. Firstly, Best Take allows us to switch faces where we've taken similar photos of people. So where the AI detects that we've taken a burst of photos of the same people in the same location. This works pretty well, apart from if you're in a dark situation or someone's face is obscured or their face is blurry. It also doesn't seem to work on a face that's partially cut off at the edge of the image. However, if you do have a set of images where all the faces are clearly in shot and they're not obscured and not blurry, this will work seamlessly. And I'm not going to go into the what even is a photo debate in this video, but maybe in another video. Next, we have Magic Editor, which allows you to do a variety of things, including move people or objects around a photo, remove those people or objects completely from a photo, or even do things like sky replacement to replace the sky with one that's more pleasing. This feature is interesting, and I definitely got mixed results. If the objects in the image are too small, then you're not easily able to select them so that you can move them or erase them. But if the objects are a decent size, then you are able to do this fine. In my experience, you definitely get some inconsistent results when it's trying to fill in the gap of when you've moved something or erased something. Sometimes it's totally passable, and sometimes it just looks like an AI generated mess. I definitely say it's not quite on par with something like the remove tool in Photoshop, but then again, we are doing these edits on a phone rather than a fully fledged computer, so this is still really impressive. Sky replacement was also hit or miss. I think it looks at the photo and tries to determine what kind of sky would go well with the colors that already exist in the photo, rather than having the sophistication of something like Photoshop that actually allows you to relight the entire photo based on the sky that you want to put in. So due to this works pretty well on some photos and then doesn't work very well on other photos. But again, it's still really impressive, but it's not at the level of Adobe, where they have been, improving this kind of feature bit by bit, literally over the course of years. Overall, the AI features are interesting, but for me, I'd probably rather jump on something like Photoshop and get better results. However, there's no doubting that these features are really convenient, especially for those cases where you just want to take something out of a photo quickly before you post it on social media. And in most cases, people aren't going to be pixel peeping on those photos to see where you've actually removed things. Lastly, in terms of AI features, we have Audio Magic Eraser, which basically allows you to identify different noises that are in the background of your video and reduce these so that you can focus on whatever the audio subject of that video is, whether that is a person speaking or someone playing an instrument, for example. Here are a couple of tests that I did. This is a video out of the Pixel 8 front-facing camera, so this is how it looks. It's a pretty windy day, so I'm quite interested to hear if the audio eraser is going to work here. This is actually using probably microphones on my Pixel Buds Pro, so this is how they sound. This is video from the ultra-wide camera on the Pixel 8. It's a windy day here, so you can tell from my hair, I'm getting blown around all over the place. I'm interested to hear how the mics sound on this, and if Magic Audio Eraser can actually make it sound a bit better, cut out that wind noise, for example. In all honesty, I wasn't actually that impressed with this, because although it reduces the noise in the background, it also actually makes my voice sound actively worse. But to be fair, these are difficult situations to work with, and it's impressive that you can do stuff like this on a phone anyway. The last thing I want to talk about is probably the reason you clicked on this video, and why I don't think you should buy the Google Pixel 8 yet. I mentioned in my last video that the reason I upgraded to Pixel 8 was because the battery life on my S22 was just absolutely shocking. So let's just say I've had some pretty mixed results on the Pixel 8 so far. In the first couple of days, I only managed between 3 and 4 hours of screen on time, and this was in both cases letting the battery run down to 9%, which wasn't ideal. Because I'm actively testing this phone for videos like this, I'm using it way more intensely than I would normally use my phone. So I'm pretty confident that I'll get better screen on time when I go back to using my phone how I normally use it. I've found 2 main battery draining activities with this phone, and that tends to be anything that is pretty intense with the CPU, so using the camera app for example, and whenever you're using mobile data. This is to be expected, but for context, I had a particularly heavy use of the phone when I was out seeing some friends in Glasgow the other night. I charged the phone to 100% and took it off charge at 3 PM. And by 6 PM it was down to 52%. During those 3 hours, I used the camera app for about 10 minutes, I had walking navigation on maps going for about 50 minutes, I had Spotify running for about 2.5 hours with my Pixel Buds Pro connected the whole time, and I was also had my Galaxy Watch 4 connected, and I was using mobile data for the entire time as well. The screen was only on for an hour and 10 minutes during that time though. So I know this was a pretty intense use of the phone during these 3 hours, but to lose 48% of the battery in such a short period of time was not ideal. During most of the 3 hours, the phone was running pretty warm too, but it never overheated. But that left me with 52% battery to last the rest of the night in Glasgow without a charger. I ended up not using my phone that much for the rest of the night, and I got home at 11:15 PM with 9% remaining. But that's not even a full day, or even half a day. In contrast to this though, on the third day I managed to get over 5 hours of screen on time. And this was a less intense day. This was me using Wi-Fi mainly and not really using mobile data. I was watching YouTube videos quite frequently, I played a few mobile games and those kind of things. So it definitely lasts longer when you're not using mobile data and not having a ton of things connected to it. This was just some initial testing, and I really need to test the battery out for longer to get some more substantial data to work with. But there seem to be some activities on this phone that completely nuke the battery. And to be honest, when you're going out with your friends, you're going to be using mobile data. You're probably going to be using maps to navigate. You're probably going to be listening to your favorite songs when you're on your way to meet them. So I think this is quite a realistic, example of a day out. The Pixel 8 has an adaptive battery feature, which basically learns how you use your phone so that it can turn off any unnecessary background usage from apps when you don't need to use them. This should in theory work to improve the battery performance over time, but we're not going to know if this is going to be the reality until I've used the phone for a month or so. So this is why I'm recommending that if you are considering buying the Pixel 8, that you hold off for now and wait for some longer term testing to be done, because if the battery life doesn't improve, this could be a deal breaker for a lot of people. From a comparison point of view to my S22, I definitely say the Pixel 8's battery is better, but it's also quite inconsistent at the moment, so only time will tell as to how much better it can be. If you also have the Pixel 8, then please drop me a comment down below and let me know what your experience has been like so far with things like the battery life and the other features, because I'd love to know if people have had a better or worse experience than I have. Based on what I've said, I'm not going to put a link down in the description to buy this phone right now, but instead I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be doing some more longer term testing on the Pixel 8 to see how it holds up over a longer period. I'm planning on releasing a video after I've had a chance to use the Pixel 8 for a month, so that I can give you a more rounded view of what it's like to use this phone in everyday use, and if things like the battery life are going to improve. And by that point, I should be able to tell you whether you should buy this phone or if you should avoid it and buy something else instead. Otherwise, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.